My name is Margaret Maggie Sloan. I'm 68 years old. And this morning I watched $450 vanish from my company's operating account while my kettle screamed on the stove. The numbers bled to zero. Then my phone lit up. Thanks for the house and the car. Mom. A winking smile I never taught my daughter to use. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and fear. My hand steadied, and something in me snapped into place. Clean and cold. Everyone expected me to beg, to hush it up, to play small. But what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Drop a comment with the city on your mind tonight. Because places hold memories. And memories shape the choices we make. Your stories keep this channel alive. And what I'm about to share might help someone you love before it's too late. I didn't begin with trucks or a title. I began with a broom and a night key that stuck in locks. Downtown Denver after midnight has elevator dings. HVAC hum. Wheels squeaking. On breaks I wrote numbers in a spiral notebook. 50 for a night class. 80 for a rust brown pickup that coughed. Numbers never pitied me. A social worker introduced me to a little girl who didn't speak. Ava held a stuffed rabbit. One ear sewn back with blue thread. She sat too small in a plastic chair and watched a sealed window like she could bargain with glass. When she finally whispered, it wasn't a question so much as a check against disaster. Is the window locked? Today it is. I said, when the sun comes back, we'll open it. I didn't know locks and codes would rule us later. I carried her home like weather could blow her out of my arms. My house smelled of pine cleaner and dish soap because I'd scrubbed everything. I turned the couch into a bed because the real one looked like a cliff. She watched me boil pasta, eyes widening at the kettle's scream until I clicked it off. My mother called the kettle a poor woman's church bell. I paid attention to everything. Ava's storms were quiet. She didn't throw or kick. She went still when car doors slammed. At 2 a.m. I'd open my eyes to find her silhouette in the doorway. Rabbit limp. Hair, a small storm. Come here. Baby. I'd whisper. She'd crawl under the quilt and press her face into my shoulder as if smell alone could anchor her. Green apple shampoo and playground dust. People define poverty with numbers. Those nights taught me another measure. I took accounting at the community college. Copying debits and credits until my hand cramped. Balance the scale, keep the lights on. I bought a truck the color of old coffee. The torn vinyl seat pinched my thigh until I learned the angle that didn't draw blood. My first contract was printer paper. Heavy. The yard smelled like diesel and wet cardboard. Ava climbed into the passenger seat and traced the split seam. Can I honk? Once. I said. The horn bleated. She laughed from somewhere unbroken. We made rituals because rituals grow roots. Delivery mornings burnt coffee on purpose. Tiny budgets on invoice backs. Serial spirals that made me late. She drew trucks with eyelashes and stuck them to the fridge with a red apple magnet that chipped and never sat straight. Each time I reached to fix it, I remembered her practiced shrug. Thanksgiving at Aunt Lorraine's house taught me how sugared whispers rot. Lorraine hugged Ava, kissed the air by my cheek, then lifted an eyebrow at the store-bought pumpkin pie. Pumpkin is pumpkin, I said. She kneeled to Ava's height and lowered her voice. One day, you'll have the nice things your mother keeps tucked away. You deserve them. Ava's head tilted. I set the pie down and felt something bloom under my ribs. Seeds like that don't need watering. High school came fast. Costs I hadn't planned smacked every list. Ava fell for a green satin prom dress. It's too much, I said. Reflex. It's my one thing, she said. I sold my car. On prom night. The kettle screamed as she clattered down the steps, and I let it scream longer than usual. College brochures promised futures. Ava did 2 semesters and came home. Professors are fake. Money is real. Save, I said. She nodded while scrolling apartments with beige carpet. Our arguments became pauses. You make decisions and call them secrets, she said. I share what matters. I said, the rest I keep safe. Sunridge formed like frost. one plain line branching into strength. I added a second truck, then a third. I signed fewer documents in public and more behind shut doors. Strategy. The world hears a woman differently when her name is on many checks. I kept the kitchen the same. I kept the kettle. I kept the crooked apple magnet. Privacy was a lock. A banker sold me on two-factor authentication. We text your phone a code. No code. No access. She slid a brochure across the counter. I tucked it into my notebook and promised I'd read it later. Later arrived as a carrier alert about a line transfer I hadn't requested. Ava met Derek on a rooftop patio. He sold homes. Or said so. He shook my hand with a grip practiced in mirrors and called me Ms. Sloan until I said Maggie was fine. Then tried Mom. He joked about shortcuts. I boiled water to give my hands a chore. The kettle filled the quiet. They married. I mortgaged my house to give them the reception they wanted. At the dance, Ava pressed her forehead to mine. Breath sweet with champagne. You always come through, she said. I kept my answer to myself. The first time she looked at me like a creditor instead of a mother. July heat made the driveway wobble. Just admit it, she said. You've always had more than you showed. I've had what I earned. I said, which is more than this, she said, waving at chipped steps and the immortal kettle. You played poor. I played safe. I said. A few days later, my phone hiccuped a carrier alert. Brief outage. Restart recommended. I did. A shopping app asked for a password. I didn't know something had already moved without my permission. And the old window wasn't as locked as I believed. Those years were lean and sometimes generous. On class nights, I left dinners in the freezer and a note on the counter. Back by 10. Text if you need me. On Saturdays, we hunted paperbacks at a thrift shop that smelled like dust and ink. Ava picked covers with girls who saved themselves. I learned routes by heart alleys that stayed plowed. Docks that loaded cleanly. The dispatcher who slipped me an extra run if I showed up on time. I didn't know it then. But all that mapping would matter later. When I needed to trace where money had gone and who held the keys. Caleb Ortiz came into my life the year I stopped pretending bookkeeping was a side chore and admitted I was building a company. He was a CPA with a JD and a face that never rushed. We met at a coffee shop where the tables rocked on bad legs. He balanced his with a napkin, then balanced my world with a sentence. Kindness never replaces discipline, he said, sliding my handwritten ledgers back to me. If you won't protect your rules won't protect you. I wrote that line on the inside cover of my spiral notebook, and, without meaning to, on the inside of my heart, he taught me to separate accounts like you'd separate wires in a house you don't want to burn down. Operating here. Payroll there. Taxes untouched. He showed me how to lock things that never look like doors. Policies. Permissions. Dual signatures. He didn't say, don't tell your daughter. But he did say, transparency is not the same as access. I told him about Ava. About what we had survived. About how I wanted everything to feel generous, so she never felt small again. Caleb folded his hands. Generous is not the same as limitless. Sunridge grew in the stubborn way. Colorado weeds do through cracks nobody thought could support life. Contracts moved from single pages to packets. I hired drivers who taught me road slang and how to read a sky. The yard developed its own weather diesel breath. Hot rubber. The metallic song of ratchet straps. I stopped wearing the same cardigan to every meeting. I bought a black blazer that made people wait half a second before underestimating me. I learned how far to lean across a table and when to say, we'll get back to you. Even when we needed the job more than they needed us. At home I kept everything the same, the kettle. The crooked magnet. The couch that still preferred the shape of a child because constancy can be its own kind of mercy. When Ava was 21. She wanted out of the apartment with the beige carpet and into a downtown place where the elevators smelled like cologne. It's not that much more, she said, which is a sentence that has ruined more budgets than greed ever did. I ran the math out loud because I wanted her to see it move across the air. Rent, utilities, commuting, savings. I offered to match what she put away for 6 months. She agreed. Then bought a couch on credit because the showroom light made everything look free. I covered the late fee the first time because I told myself I was paying for the lesson. I covered it the second time because lessons don't always take. On the third time, I sent a screenshot of her own numbers back to her and waited. She didn't reply for 2 days. When she did, it was a thumbs up. The digital equivalent of a door half closed. Derek started appearing in our story like a watermark. You only see at certain angles. He had a story for every question and a solution for every problem that involved someone else's risk. He liked to say, "It's who you know," while scrolling, as if people were buttons he could press. When he proposed, I hugged him and kept my thoughts to myself because nobody wants a mother's weather at their engagement party. I met his fixer friend Rick Stanton at a barbecue where the ribs were perfect and the conversations were not. Rick wore a watch big enough to count as a weapon and repeated every name 3 times as if he were making a spell. Maggie.
Desgraça por
Maggie.
baixo.
Maggie. He smiled like a loan shark who tithes. I rinsed my plate in the kitchen and stared out the window at a backyard that wasn't mine. A wind chime clinked like glass teeth. Ava and Derek wanted Willow Creek Estates because the model home smelled like cinnamon and possibility. The saleswoman waved through numbers like she was fanning herself. "With the right creative package," she said, and looked at Derek. He looked at me. "Mom, this is it. This is the start." He said start like a finish line. I felt every year of my life put its hand on my shoulder. "What's your down payment?" I asked. And the silence that followed was a language I already spoke. I didn't co-sign. I did something worse. I bought time. I paid off 2 of Ava's smaller debts, so the credit report would stop blinking red long enough for Derek to work his contacts. I told myself it was a one-time intervention. Kindness, Caleb would say later, needs a thermostat. The wedding was a bouquet of compromises bound together with hope. I mortgaged my house because I wanted her to feel celebrated, the way I'd promised her on nights she crawled into my bed to escape nightmares. Aunt Lorraine cried at the ceremony. Fat, happy tears that camera lenses love. "See?" She whispered to Ava when I couldn't hear, but later would imagine. "Your mother had it all along." The kettle screamed in my head, though we were in a rented hall with champagne and a DJ who loved Motown more than the bride did. Ava pressed her forehead to mine and said, "You always come through." I nodded as if that sentence weren't a rope. After the honeymoon, the calls started to sound like invoices with small talk draped over them. Car insurance got weirdly expensive. The landlord miscounted. Derek's commission would hit next cycle. For real. I sent money once. Then twice. After the third time, I wrote a budget on a napkin and slid it across a diner table sticky with syrup. "If you follow this for 3 months," I said, "I'll match your emergency fund." Derek smiled, grateful in a way that made me check my purse. Ava said thank you and folded the napkin so cleanly it looked like origami. They called less for a while, which felt like progress until I learned silence can also be the sound of plotting. At Sunridge, I installed more locks that didn't look like locks. Jenna, my operations assistant, implemented step-up verification, dual approvals, device whitelisting. I kept my phone number like it was a gate code only I knew. A carrier email landed one Tuesday, minor system maintenance. No action needed. I deleted it. The following week, a signal hiccup dropped a call with Caleb. "You're breaking up," he said. "Say it again. We'll need a clean paper trail for the new client." I said when the line caught. "Always," he said. And Maggie remembered the sentence. "Kindness never replaces discipline." I said, and he laughed the way good men laugh when they know the truth has already cost you. Ava's mood shifted that summer. She started coming by in dresses that announced a life one bracket up. Perfume I couldn't name. Shoes that made her move like a newscaster. "We're just leveling up," she said when I asked about the spending. "You taught me to think bigger. I taught you to balance." I said, "It's the same," she said. I watched her eyes while she said it and saw where the sentence bent. Lorraine took her to lunch and called me afterward. "She's a Sloan," Lorraine said. "Like a diagnosis. Ambition runs in the blood. Ambition runs on budgets." I said, Lorraine laughed into the mouthpiece and told me to get some rest. The first sign I missed wasn't a sign. It was the absence of one. Ava stopped asking to borrow my car. Derek stopped asking me to look at listings. They stopped asking me anything and replaced the questions with updates I couldn't verify. We found a guy. Derek said. He knows how to structure things so banks see what they need. I put down the phone and laid my palm flat on the table to stop it from shaking. The Apple magnet slid a fraction on the fridge. I straightened it and thought about windows. One afternoon in September, the yard was loud enough to drown thought backs of trailers slammed. A driver laughing too hard at his own joke. Radio static. Jenna came in with printouts and a face like bad weather. Weird pings, she said. Failed logins from unfamiliar IPs. Then successful ones. Short sessions. We changed passwords and swept devices. I called the carrier and listened to hold music that sounded like someone imitating reassurance. Everything looks normal on our end. The rep chirped. I wanted to ask which end that was because from where I stood, the ground had begun to tilt. I went home and made coffee I knew I wouldn't drink. The kettle's scream felt longer. Or maybe I was the one stretching. When it clicked off, the silence had a thickness to it, like air before hail. Ava texted a selfie. Sun in her hair. A caption that read, "New beginnings." I typed, "Proud of you," and didn't hit send. I set the phone down face up and watched the screen sleep. I thought about Ava at 3, asking whether the window was locked. I thought about the banker's brochure with its cheerful icons. I thought about the sentence that made people accuse me of coldness, even as it kept our lights on. Kindness never replaces discipline. I wish I could say I saw it coming. I didn't. What I saw was the shape of my life. Each careful choice like a brick. And I believed a house built brick by brick could not be taken in a night. I believed locks were locks. That a phone in my hand meant my life was in my hand. That daughters, even complicated ones, would step back from ledges you spent years building railings around. Faith, it turns out, is a door thieves prefer because it opens quietly. When the morning finally came, the morning that split my life into before and after, I was not a new woman. I was the same woman with the same kettle and the same notebook and the same soft hope that the world honors effort. And yet, under all that sameness, something had hardened. The way a river under ice is water still, but no longer gives where it used to. I was ready without knowing the word. The first tremor wasn't the missing money. It was smaller. The kind you blame on a semi 2 streets over. Jenna tapped my door with a knuckle that barely touched wood. "Payroll portal shows you logged in from Kansas City," she said. Sliding printouts like X-rays. 5 minutes. Then out. I was at this desk. I said, "I know." She said, "Which is why I printed it." We forced logouts. Rotated passwords. Enabled every chain the software offered. I set my phone on the desk, like proximity could be armor. In the break room, the kettle screamed because someone forgot their tea. I clicked my pen and tried to hear the shape of what was coming. By noon, Eddie hovered in my doorway. "Boss, you hear anything about checks?" he asked. Voice low. "My wife keeps stalking the mailbox. You'll be paid," I said. "On time." He nodded and left. At home, Ava and Derek were on my couch with the glow people wear when they've decided your answer in advance. His laptop blinked real estate tabs. Her smile owned the air. "We put in an offer," Derek said. "Willow Creek. 3-bed. Yard. Perfect schools." "Where'd your down payment come from?" I asked. "Contacts. Creative package," he said. Ava tilted her head. "Mom, we're done with tiny. It's time. It's time when you can afford it." I said, "You can afford it?" She shot back. "Or are we still doing the cardigan act?" I looked at the stuffed rabbit on the shelf. One ear blue threaded. "I'm not your lender," I said. "You're my mother." She said, "Same thing." Derek tapped the trackpad. "We're moving forward." "Maggie, you should be happy." "Be careful with should," I said. It's how people smuggle shame into a sentence. They left in a gust of perfume and certainty. The house settled the way old wood does when a truck passes. The bank called at
Porra, meu
9:03
querido.
a.m. Security check. A woman chirped. Verifying a wire to Stanton Holding LLC. Deny. I said, freeze
HG.
the profile. In branch verification only. Paper shuffled. Cheer thinned. Noted. I drove to the branch with Jenna's logs. The manager said, our systems are robust. I left with pamphlets and a business card that felt like a shrug. Back at the yard. Rosa met me by the dock. People are nervous. She said, rumors. What are they saying? That we're in trouble. That you hid something. That checks bounce easier than balls. She held my gaze. I told them to get back to work. Tell me I wasn't lying. You weren't. I said, Sunridge pays its people. Full stop. That night, the kitchen light felt colder. I brewed coffee I didn't need. Ava texted a photo of a red car. New baby, I typed nice. Erased it. I typed, be smart. Erased that too. I let the kettle scream until a neighbor rapped the wall. 2 days later, Derek went live. Family should support family. He said, some folks hoard while they play poor. Sad. Must be nice to be old money. A comment read, cut the check. Mom. He didn't use my name. He didn't have to. Aunt Lorraine called. People are talking. She said, let them. I said, you know how this looks. She said, all those years of thrift store virtue. I pay for what matters. I said, she laughed. Stubborn suits you until it doesn't. Jenna's email stacked. Failed authentication. Password reset at 2:13 a.m. Successful login from a coffee shop off Colfax. We drove there. Ordered drinks we didn't want. Watched faces like guilt had to tell. It didn't. We left with a timestamp and the kind of anger that keeps you awake. On Friday, 3 drivers asked for advances. I said yes to 1 and no to 2. Eddie brought me a donut. For luck. He said, luck is for people without plans. I said, then softened. Thank you. That night, I folded laundry with the TV off and listened to the house remember me stare groan. Fridge sigh. The window ticking as it cooled. I pictured Ava at 3. Counting locks. I pictured Ava at 27. Counting the ways I'd failed to turn my life into an ATM. The kettle screamed. I didn't stop it until the sound sharpened into courage. I stood very still. On Monday, Jenna brought a printout that looked like a heartbeat spikes. Then a flat line. Operating account. She said, small transfers. Same destination with tiny variations. Stanton Holdings. Stanton Holding. Stanton HH. LLC. She tapped the total. They're testing the fence. How much? I asked. 8,000. In crumbs. Crumbs make loaves. I said, I called Caleb. Papers whispered on his end. Immediate controls. He said, dual signatures over 1,000. Physical tokens. Pull device logs. New phones for you and Jenna. And Maggie, prepare yourself. If it's internal, it will hurt. It's not internal. I said too fast. Then we'll prove it. He said, remember the sentence? Kindness never replaces discipline. I said, by mid-afternoon we were in the conference room with blinds shut. Jenna spread screenshots like crime scene photos. We walked the timeline. SIM swap tells. Coffee shop logins. The near wire to Stanton. 3 dates Ava had dropped off lunch for Mom. She hugged Rosa. Waved at Jenna. Left with a candy. On the last visit, the carrier maintenance email hit my inbox. Correlation isn't causation. I told myself. And heard the phrase pretend to be wisdom. Do you want me to call her? Jenna asked. No. I said, we move facts. Not feelings. At 5. An unfamiliar number rang. Ms. Sloan, a voice said. Judith with Willow Creek Estates. Confirming the cashier's check for earnest money. Congratulations to Ava and Derek, welcome to the neighborhood. What bank issued it? I asked, "First Frontier." She said, "I called First Frontier. We can't discuss client specifics." The rep said, "They used my company's account." I said, "Discuss it." Hold music. A second voice. "Ms. Sloan, please visit a branch." "I'm done visiting."
Oh yes.
I said, "Freeze anything tied to Sunridge Logistics. Now." "Understood." I drove to Ava's building and watched glass doors inhale and exhale strangers. I went up without texting. She opened in a robe, hair pinned with a gold clip. "You can't just show up," she said. "I can when my money does." I said, "What money?" "The earnest money. The car. The crumbs." "You're paranoid," she said. "Paranoia pays better than denial." Derek walked out, still tucking his shirt. "We're adults," he said. "Stop policing. You used my operating account." I said. He blinked. "You always said the business was family." I said, "The company feeds families." I said, "Not that it was a buffet." Ava tilted her head. "You played poor. Mom, you wanted me humble. You can afford to help." "I did help years of it." I said, "Now you're punishing me for taking what was promised." She said, "Promised by whom?" I asked. "By
Yeah.
decent parents."
Yeah.
Derek said. Something in me went still. "Pack a bag." I said, "You're about to learn what consequences look like." "You wouldn't." Ava said. "I would." I said, "And I will." I stepped into the hall and called Caleb. "File it. Emergency TRO." He said, "Size your warrants. If needed." U.S. Marshals. Ready for the noise. Noise is cheaper than collapse. I said. The next day moved like an action sequence. We swore statements. Attached logs. A judge signed. And paper turned into people in jackets. At Willow Creek, a red car rolled onto a flatbed while a neighbor filmed. A yellow notice went up on a model home door. At Ava's, marshals knocked. "Ma'am, we have a warrant to seize assets purchased with misappropriated funds." Derek tried charm, then volume. Neither worked. Ava cried. A sound I hadn't heard since childhood. Calls I let. Text stacked. Comments under Derek's video flipped. Guess the money wasn't hers. Oof. Awkward. Aunt Lorraine left a voicemail that began, "How could you?" and ended, "Call me." I didn't. Back at the yard, Eddie hugged me quick, then looked away like privacy was a paycheck. Rosa faced the crew. "You've got jobs. The boss has your back. The rest is noise." Jenna set a folder on my desk, a trail clean enough for court. I put my palm on it the way you do a newborn's back, feeling for breath. That night, I let the kettle scream and didn't fear the sound. It was loud, neighbors peered. But it was mine. I turned off the burner and listened to a quiet that wasn't empty. The kind that means the next move belongs to you. December in Denver makes marble feel colder. The U.S. District Court atrium held its own weather wet wool. Capier ozone. The hush of people trying not to breathe too loud. Cameras nested on the steps like patient crows. I wore the black suit. The small pearls. The face that doesn't flinch. When the clerk called our case, I stood. Ava sat at the defense table in a gray suit that didn't fit her life. Her hair lay flat. Even vanity had gone quiet. Derek slid into the second row. Jaw tight. Eyes slippery. Aunt Lorraine kept her mouth small. Her coat a statement in a color called Old Money. I didn't look long at any of them. Familiar faces can drown you. All rise. We rose. Judge Eleanor Whitaker took the bench stern without theatrics. The seal above her made every word heavier. AUSA Nathan Pierce faced the jury, buttoned his jacket, and used a carpenter's voice. "This isn't a family misunderstanding," he said. "It's embezzlement, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft that endangered real paychecks." A screen woke up behind him. Jenna's flowchart marched across it: dates, times, amounts. Destination names mutating by a letter each time as if shame could be disguised by spelling. Stanton Holdings. Stanton Holding.
Bisa ku
Stanton
sige lah tuh.
HH. LLC. He clicked again. SIM swap affidavit from the carrier. Coffee shop IP logs off Colfax. The near wire, I stopped mid-flight. $580,000. He said, and let the number sit on the air like a hand on a chest. The defense rose a young attorney wearing a haircut that wanted to be older. Ms. Sloan grew up in opacity. She believed these funds were promised. This is not a criminal mind. This is a daughter. I felt the jury glance at me without turning their heads. I kept my hands folded in my lap and breathed through my nose. Caleb took the stand first. Right hand. Oath. Quiet authority. He explained operating accounts like plumbing pipes you don't steal from if you want lights and wages to flow. These withdrawals don't match payroll cadence. He said, they match retail hours. The defense tried inheritance. Caleb didn't blink. Inheritance doesn't come from payroll at 1:147 p.m. Jenna followed with printouts and a chin that didn't tremble. Failed 2 FA challenges from unfamiliar IPs. She said. Then brief successful sessions. Transfers to near identical entities. The defense tried sarcasm. Are you saying Ms. Sloan hacked a bank? Jenna kept her voice even. I'm saying the SIM tied to authentication codes was swapped. If the phone is the key ring. Someone made a copy. Rosa walked slow. Sat like her knees hurt. And spoke for the people who keep a company breathing. When checks were late. Men who don't ask for help asked me if they should look elsewhere. Wives cried in grocery aisles. I told them to hold the line because I believed the boss would fix it. The judge sustained an objection. Trimmed the edge. Left the harm. When it was my turn. The microphone smelled like tin. Pierce measured his questions clean. I told the story in pieces that clicked together in night key. A rabbit's blue-stitched ear. Kettle whistles. Diesel mornings. The cheerful 2 FA brochure I trusted too much. The selfie caption New Beginnings. The call from Willow Creek congratulating me on money I never sent. Did you authorize your daughter to access Sunridge's operating account? Pierce asked. No. Did you give her your phone? Your SIM? Your codes? No. Did you intend to buy her a house and a car with corporate funds? No. The defense held up a reception photo, my hand on Ava's cheek. You told her you'd always come through. I did. I said. With love. With boundaries. He waited for me to break. I didn't. In closing. Pierce didn't swell the music. He put Ava's text on the screen. Thanks for the house and the car. Mom. The soft knife of a smiley wink without the graphic. This case is about choices. He said. Repeated. Deliberate choices. The jury left. The room exhaled. I counted imperfections in the courtroom, seal instead of watching my daughter's face fracture. They came back fast. The foreperson handed paper to the clerk. The clerk to the judge. Russell. Russell small sounds for a large pivot. On count 1. Embezzlement. Guilty. Count 2. Wire fraud. Guilty. Count 3. Aggravated identity theft. Guilty. Ava folded inward. Shoulders to ribs. Derek's mouth opened. Then remembered whose room this was. Aunt Lorraine stared into the grout. Sentencing spliced to the verdict in memory. Judge Whitaker's cadence didn't gloat. The magnitude here is not just dollars. It is disruption to 20 families and to the integrity of a company built over decades. The court imposes 72 months in federal custody. Restitution, $720,000. A no-contact order post-release. Unless modified by this court. Ava turned. Eyes rimmed red in a face I loved before she could speak. Mom? I lifted a hand not to reject. To hold the air steady. I forgive you. I said, quiet as a prayer. That doesn't change this. The marshals moved with courtesy that still breaks the heart. Handcuffs clicked. Somewhere, a pin fell. Winter rattled at a window no one opens. Pierce stacked his files. Caleb squeezed my shoulder. Jenna didn't smile. She nodded once. A soldier's signal. Rosa left to call the drivers. Work doesn't pause for verdicts. On the steps, microphones butted like reeds. Statement a reporter asked. I kept my voice low enough to make them lean. Kindness never replaces discipline. I said, today was discipline. Flashes popped. Derek disappeared into a crowd that suddenly had no room for him. Aunt Lorraine adjusted her coat and looked past me, as if past could erase. I went home, set water to boil, and let the kettle scream a siren I controlled. Then I turned off the flame and held the quiet. The next move belonged to me, and it wouldn't be loud. It would be meticulous and patient. Like everything I've ever built. They thought they'd gutted me. All they did was hand me my weapon. I didn't celebrate. I audited. The night after sentencing,
pra quê, cara?
I spread files across my dining table like a map of a country I intended to patrol. Caleb came over with a thin laptop and a thicker folder.
Pior que eu tenho
Jenna
que ver
arrived
se eu
with a portable
consigo
drive the size of a matchbox.
configurar.
We didn't toast. We plugged in. Start with flow. Caleb said, money in, money out. No opinions. Just paths. The forensic package took form the way a photograph appears in developer faint outlines. Then, dark truths. Every transfer Ava made had a twin shadow on Derek's side. A referral fee here. A consulting invoice there. All roads edging back toward Rick Stanton's shells. Stanton Holdings. Stanton Holding. Stanton
Eu
HH.
consigo que vamos ver se eu
LLC.
vou tentar
Watching the
configurar
names
daqui a pouco.
mutate by a letter each time felt like tracking a snake through dust. Not proof yet, but a direction. Jenna slid over a second stack. Carrier logs. She said, the day your line hiccuped, a SIM change request hit a kiosk across town. They recorded a driver's license that was almost your face. She zoomed. A woman who could pass for me if you didn't know me. The smile too wide. The hair wrong by a shade. Stanton's fixer has a girlfriend. Jenna said, works part-time at a salon next door. Coincidence? I said, and heard the word, try to talk me to sleep. Pattern. Caleb said, I opened a banker's box I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a binder labeled Sunridge Trust Ethical Clause. My pen had underlined a sentence I barely remembered writing. Upon any beneficiary's commission of financial or moral fraud, disbursements shall suspend and redirect to Sunridge Scholarship Fund for dependents of hourly employees. The clause folded the air around us into a neat square. You built the lock years ago. Caleb said, we just heard the click. We don't announce it. I said,
Não, tem vergonha de ficar
we let it
fazendo
work.
live, principalmente de
I
RGM,
drafted
sou
2
ruim,
letters.
Já
One to the scholarship
normal,
board,
já fico nervoso, imagina
triggering the
fazendo live.
clause. Another to an AUSA in financial crimes. Not Pierce, someone whose desk didn't touch our case. I included the forensic breadcrumbs vendor names. Timestamps. Invoices with typos that repeated like a stutter. I did not accuse. I asked a question. Would your office advise on whether these patterns merit independent inquiry? Polite is a blade if you sharpen it. Around midnight, I stepped onto the balcony. Penthouse glass breathing back city lights. The front range cut a black line against a colder black sky. I thought about Ava's letter one day. Maybe years from now. Asking for a meeting with a counselor present. I thought about saying yes and meaning it. Forgiveness, to me,
I dropped it up.
has never meant forgetting. It means living wide awake. Before bed, I set water to boil. The kettle rose to its thin scream. I let it carry a full breath, then turned off the flame. Silence settled like snow soft. Decisive. They believed they had stripped me. But the ledgers say otherwise. I have locks they never saw. I have time. And I have a question moving quietly through federal corridors toward men who mistake charm for cover. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and share the moment you realized love without boundaries isn't love at all. Your comments help someone else draw a line. Keep a job. Or sleep without fear. If this story stirred something anger, relief, a plan, drop it below. I read them. I answer when I can. And if you know someone who keeps paying other people's debts with their peace, send this to them tonight. We build strength here. One honest story at a time.